Welcome to the Illuminating Primary Care podcast.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Illuminating Primary Care podcast. I'm joined by two fabulous guests, a familiar face, Shilpa Patel. So she is the lead GP pharmacist and partner at the Wellbeing Integrated Healthcare, pharmacist, mentor, assessor, and inspirational speaker. And I'm also joined by Yuen, lead PCM pharmacist, GP partner, Joint Clinical Director in Lincolnshire. Ewan has created a support network for pharmacists and technicians across Lincolnshire, is an expert speaker for CPPE and on the advisory panel for the Lincoln University as well. So I'm very excited to have them on board for this episode. We will explore the journeys of both Shilpa and Ewan's and how they are trailblazers in their own right. From clinical pharmacists to GP partners to clinical directors. And I myself, I'm a nursing and allied health consultant here at Menlo. Yeah, without further ado, we'll get stuck in. So, yeah, I mean, an opportunity for you to introduce yourself.
Oh, well, first of all, it's a privilege to be here and a real privilege to meet you, Yun. We've been wanting to meet up for quite a while, so as I say, this is quite exciting that we've finally managed to actually meet. So I have been a partner at my GP practice for about 6 years now, and that's kind of taken me on a whole different journey. It's opened up lots of doors for me. I've got a community pharmacy background, so I did 15 years in community pharmacy, and I'm kind of now linking the two together, community pharmacy with kind of general practice pharmacy. I've worked my way up kind of the partnership role, so I started off as a junior partner, and I'm just kind of learning all the different aspects of general practice. And we've got quite a few of our partners retiring at the end of this year. So my kind of main focus at the moment is to learn everyone's roles because I'll be the lead partner once quite a few people have left. So I'm kind of working towards just learning everything general practice related for in preparation for next year, really. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
My name's Ewan. So a lot of people on LinkedIn said you have to meet Shilpa. Both of you have to do something together, and it's such a pleasure to meet here. Thanks to Jasmine that we're able to come together and talk. So you will be hearing the first conversation between Shilpa and Ewan. So please tune in. So a bit of my background: I, like Shilpa, came from community and then move on to more private clinics, so design algorithms for clinics and see how to make sure it's safe. So working with quite a lot of MDT, providing that. And then while I was doing that, slowly transitioned to general practice, been in general practice for quite some time now, and then took on the clinical director role first and then the partner role after. So 6 months in, my partner roles are relatively new in comparison. But absolutely love the job. I love the combination of all the different variety that I have throughout my week. So clinically, non-clinically, the CD roles, liaising with people outside, off the practice and off the PCN. That's been really rewarding for me.
Brilliant. Thank you both. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this goes and explore, both of your journeys. So I'll start off with, did you both envision yourself becoming partners or, clinical directors? Was this ever on the cards for you?
No.
Or did it just...
I
So
can see
yeah,
Shilpa shaking her head as well. I don't think you when you first started, you went, "Oh, I want to be this or that." I definitely didn't started with the aim of a title or a status. I just wanted to find my way. So when I was in community, I got to a point where I did everything I could. So then went on to do something different and see how I can be stretched. I get bored really easily. So whenever I do something and I go, "Oh, I can do this now. What's next? What's next? What's next?" And I can see Shilpa nodding because probably we're quite similar. I think people with variety of different hats on tend to have this quality, which I guess is a good thing. And then when I move on to other things, I found in the private clinics, it was fun, but just not my niche. So you almost have this gut feeling. So when I was doing my prescribing and work in general practice, I was like, this is something. So started in a practice for more than 5 years, then move on to another practice where I became senior, build the team from scratch, and then slowly transitioned to clinical director, then partner. It was never, it was never that thought in my head where I was aiming to be a CD, I was aiming to be a partner. It's always felt quite natural progression because I was slowly heading towards that direction. I want to have a platform to help more people, whether it's pharmacy team or practice team or PCN people. And that became, I'm given that title so that I can have an impact for people around me.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I didn't even know that pharmacists could be GP partners.
Yeah.
When when in fact, I still remember the day when I was kind of like asked if I wanted to be part. I was on the NHS England pilot scheme, the first one. So that was about 8 years ago, I think. And then after 2 years, you had to have your review, and pretty much it was like, we'll either keep you or you don't have a job now, because it was a 2 year funding. And I went in for my review, and I knew they were going to keep me because I had kind of made myself indispensable by then. But they said, yeah, we want to keep you and we want to make you partner. And I was like, really came as a shock. And it was like, and at first I said no straight away, because I was like, I don't want to be coming in on a Saturday. I didn't even know what the role, involved. And it was quite, I don't know, it was scary because I was asking around and people didn't really know, you know, financially what it meant. I couldn't. It took a while for me to get onto the contract, on the partnership contract, because our accountant didn't think it was allowed, and so it was all quite new, and it was something that yeah, I definitely hadn't considered, and I was quite scared in the beginning. And yeah, I think I said no 2 or 3 times, and then they kept saying, I think there was two partners at the time. They saw some potential in me that I didn't see at all. I didn't know I had the potential, and they kind of brought it out of me. So over the years, I think they've really kind of made me realize. And we'll be put in situations where they'll say, oh, we'll send you Shilpa, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm talking about there. And they'll be like, no, you can do it. And they've just given me the confidence, and it's just kind of it's pushed me along down that route of just getting better and better at that kind of job. And now kind of the confidence is there where I just put myself forward for anything. And it's, and as you say, Ewan, it's kind of like it gives you the authority to do so much more. So now you can make those decisions, and it's like a ball that's just rolling down the hill now, because you're able to make those decisions. You're able to do so many other things really quickly, and I love that bit. If someone comes up with an idea, and I'm quite an ideas person, they're we're trying to be very innovative. We just come up with new ideas, and I'll be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's start it on Monday, kind of thing. And I don't have to go to several meetings, and I don't have to kind of, ask loads of people. I just say, yeah, let's just do it. And, there's not many jobs where you can do that at a high level. And yeah, you can make a lot of changes, and that's what feels really, really good.
Yeah. It sounds like it was natural progression, like it was meant to be and very fitting. And like you said, sometimes it just takes that one person to see the potential, to give you the opportunity and platform. Um, do you think, as you mentioned, you didn't know that partnership was even possible for clinical pharmacists? Do you think it will become more moving forwards?
Mm.
Are we seeing this more?
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that's what connected me and you. And I was really excited when I saw, because there aren't many pharmacist GP partners, but they're emerging now. Suddenly, there's like, um, I keep seeing it on LinkedIn. Obviously, that's the one place that I've been connecting with people, um, and I really believe there's huge potential for pharmacists to become GP partners, because a lot of GPs don't want to be partners anymore, or they're not able to. And I think with our community pharmacy background, what I've really learned is that we think really kind of businessy. We've got this business mind, and we're very target orientated. We've got so many skills that we've learned from community pharmacy. And at one of our meetings, one of my partners said, "Oh, we'll send Shilpa because she's the one with a business background." And I was like, "I don't have a business background, but that's how they look at me, as someone with a bit, because I've always got a business head on." And I think a lot of community pharmacists are like that. And um, so I've been campaigning quite a bit lately to try and encourage pharmacists to go down this route. It's not very difficult. Well, it's not the easiest thing, but if you find yourself in the right situation and at the right surgery, there's huge potential, and people can go down this route. And I really encourage other pharmacists to do that. And I'm very happy for people to contact me for information about how to go down that route.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there will be some element of luck in terms of which practice and which PCN you're in, because some will not even consider that. I've spoken to people who really want to try taking on additional roles, but met with quite a bit of resistance. And the conversations around how we can break down those perhaps biases or preconceived ideas when somebody sees a pharmacist and hasn't ever considered pharmacists to be a valuable addition to the partnership. I think the other thing that Shilpa's mentioned is find people who can advocate for you, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a mentor. It's if you have at least one person who's in the decision making board, then that person can open doors for you that you never knew existed. So before I became clinical director, I really enjoyed going out and speaking to all the stakeholders, all the trusts, and all the different groups of people, neighborhood team, to create something. And my previous CD saw something in me, and when we were talking, she said, "I think you'd be suitable to be a strategic lead for the PCN." So I took on that role, and she took me to meetings. She took me on, because you realize it's going to sometimes similar people around the table for different meetings, and she'll say, "This is Yuen," and start extending those networks and connections. If you are continuously just hooked on your day to day, it's very hard for you to step away and say, what else is out here? Because when you see the day to day, you lose sight of the bigger picture. Like, how can I make the practice better? How can I contribute to the PCN? And it's those additional bit makes you stand out, because everyone can do the day to day really well given time and practice and training. So finding somebody who support you that way is really important, and making sure you're visible to everybody. So not just the people that you want to impress, not just your bosses, but anyone that you interact with, because each interaction I see as an investment. It can be any part of the practice team, whether it's a clinician or a care navigator or an admin person. Each conversation, because everyone hears everything when you're in a practice or when you're a PCN, it feeds back to the people that you want to perhaps make an impression at the end. So all of those are important. So making sure you don't just rush in and start your clinic, making sure you take a few minutes to check in and listen to what people are telling you, and remembering what they're telling you. When you actually show that you care, it makes a lot of impression to people around you. And I'm sure for us as well, we want to feel the same way.
And I suppose it's kind of making sure you've got a really good team that can support you, because like you said, sometimes you have to take that step away from the clinical role. And I think I was only able to do that because my second pharmacist is really amazing, and then the rest of the team, like I feel like I can step out whenever I want. And if you've and that takes a while to build, and once you've got that team that can run the place, or I've got a really good medicine management team, that's what gives me kind of the power to be able to step out, look at things, look at the bigger picture. And I think that's something that I've been recognized for a lot, even right from day one. I ran a clinic, but I also saw lots of problems, and I took the problems to the practice manager, and I said to them, your prescribing processes are appalling. Like, I can't believe you run it this way. And they were really interested to, what are your ideas? And I went in and kind of changed the whole prescribing process, and the monitoring, and kind of the whole repeat prescription process. And those kind of things had such a massive impact, to the point where, how I said at my 2-year review, I knew they couldn't get rid of me. It's because I was kind of in the spine of the surgery. I would the place, it would have fallen apart if they didn't renew my contract. And whereas if I had just been running that clinic day in, day out, when I leave, I can easily be replaced. Whereas, my ideas and my innovations, and they're the things that can't be replaced. So you kind of get yourself to a place where you are is it called indisposable?
Yeah.
And yes, I think really where I've succeeded is I keep putting myself on these projects. A bit like you said, after 3 months you get bored, and you look for something else, but it just escalates, and you end up working on bigger and bigger projects. We had a couple of weeks ago, someone said to me, "Yeah, you're not a completer finisher." And I was like, well, whenever I do, the Myers-Briggs and things like that, I always come up as a completer finisher, but they look at me as she's always on the next project. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just in my mind, my project is to just start the project, get it up and running, and then I pass it on to someone else, and then I go on to the next project. But I'm really good at that kind of side of things. So I look at myself as a completer finisher, because that's kind of where my part ends. Whereas others have said, she's always going on to the next project. And that sounds like a bit like what you're doing, Ewan.
Yeah, I think it's important for those listening to understand that the things that we talked about, the things that will make a difference, doesn't come straight away. So if you're a year in and you think, oh, I'm really stuck, I want to do those things that you and Shilpa's mentioned, but I don't know how, it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of communication with the people that you're working with to say, what do you want from me? And what do I want out of this role that will benefit you? So it's investing. If you can't do anything else, just do that. Just do the communicating bit, because when you start that, they know where you're going, they know what you're trying to do that is benefiting them, and that's a starting point. It can be, okay, some part of my week is blocked out to do some of these, because you can demonstrate those benefits in numbers, in audits, in any other ways that will help them with their CQC inspection or any other things. So start with small things. It doesn't have to be something that's really big, but starting to make yourself visible and making your expectation really, really clear. And when you're doing your day-to-day, identify, like Shilpa said, identify things that you can help. Don't just go with the problem, go with the solution, because that's when people go, oh, actually, you've got something to add to this conversation. You're not just talking about it or not just moaning about it. It's different when some people come to you and say, I've got this problem, I've got 3 ways, what do you think? It might be none of those 3 ways work. It's fine. It might be that you need to understand more of the practice mechanics, but it's a starting point. But without you putting yourself out there to say, these are my 3 ideas, and getting shot down and say, right, I know a little bit more now, let's work on that. People then know where you are in terms of your thought process, and then they know when you're progressing as well.
How did you did you tell us how you became a GP partner, or like
No, so I started as a PCN pharmacist, and it was just me across 5 sites. And so it's impossible to do all the things that we've just talked about. So I created a team from scratch, and now we have a team across all the sites with pharmacists and technician. And so by doing that, I was able to then have thinking time almost,
Mm,
and
mm,
things that are involving projects and other, going outside, being involved in faculty and other conversation. And how does that benefit then the practices and the PCN? So it's a close loop that I wanted to ensure all parties involved know that when they provide those thinking time, this is going to benefit them in a lot of different ways. In regards to me becoming so for me to become a CD, I actually asked for it. I said my previous CD has retired, so I said, can I take on the role? And the first reaction was shock, like,
mm,
with my
mm,
joint CD now. And he's like, oh, well, I guess so, because
mm.
it's not very common for pharmacists to become a clinical director.
Actually, I've just remembered that was our first conversation on LinkedIn. I think I messaged you and
Yeah,
said, "Oh, I've never heard of a pharmacist who's a clinical director. What is
yeah.
it you do, and where is it?" Like, it was so new to me when I saw that you had taken
Mm.
that role.
And what I said was, let me speak to each of the practices with the leads, and also the practice manager, and I'll come back to you. And when I spoke to individual practice, because I've worked across all sites, all of the reaction was like, yes, we think you'll be really good, and then list all the qualities that they saw in me that will benefit me being a CD. And so that is a lot of validation in terms of all the little bits that I invest in,
Mm,
everything that I
mm,
put in made a difference. And so that happened. And in terms of partnership, I was thinking about it but not really taking it seriously. I've just, like yourself, is it a lot of work, is it worth it? And then I was approached a couple of times, actually. First time in somewhere else, and I said no because their values are not aligned to mine. And then I was approached a second time by where I'm working, and then I was like, actually, this is something that I need to find out a little bit more. So I went to a few like LMC webinars. So anyone who are interested, like Shilpa said, the finance side of things, or the question that you need to ask before you start taking on partnership. So I attended those, and I was like, actually, let me speak to the partners. So we had a conversation, and then I said, yeah, it's like Shilpa, a lot of the things I'm already doing because I'm based in that practice. I'm slowly making changes, but sometimes there is that additional, not barrier, but more time consuming when I want change to happen a lot quicker. Whereas now I can be the one having the say. So that came on because people were asking, second time I think it was the right thing to do. Their values aligned with mine. I feel that, I'm making a difference to the people. And when they announced the news to all the practice team, everyone was just like, yeah, you'll be really good. Even though I'm the only pharmacist, and we don't have a dispensary. I think sometimes people think you can only become a pharmacist if it's a dispensary practice, and this is sometimes what I see more, that if they have a community pharmacy attached to the practice, they go, oh yeah, we want a pharmacist to manage that, so we'll make that pharmacist partner. That is not the case. There are so many other things that you can contribute, that other additional roles, maybe GPs, AMPs, or practice managers, don't have that side. Just making sure that you showcase that whenever you can.
I was going to ask actually, when did you realise you wanted to become a GP partner? But it feels like the opportunity kind of came to you guys because of your reputation and the amount of work you invested in your careers
Mm.
at that stage. So I guess it's not necessarily going out to find the opportunity. I guess it's, in essence, you created it without even realising it.
mm. I think
Um,
what people do need to really understand is it takes time, and it's as long as you're trying your best, doing your best, you get recognized for it. I've had young pharmacists who have, very new to GP practice say to me, "How do I become a partner?" And it's kind of it's very unrealistic to think that's going to happen overnight. It takes building trust, communicating, like you say, Yuen, and it takes so much effort, and then there's the luck element as well, because I was in the right place at the right time many times, but many times. and I would really kind of go over and above, which I was doing in community pharmacy anyway. And as long as you're doing that kind of throughout your career, you do get recognized. And I think there's so many new opportunities within general practice or within primary care that where you can be recognized now, and so many roles that do need filling. But you can't just expect that it's going to come to you. You do have to work towards getting there. And I do kind of do silly things like logging in at 5 a.m. and things like that, but that's something I've always done before I was a partner. Even it's certain things that I really enjoy doing, but as a partner I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. Anything I don't want to do, I give it to someone else. So there's pros and cons.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you said, you've got to, I guess, be realistic. And like you said, you did a lot of work with that practice before them even considering, you to be a partner. So you created that impact. And in terms of the route into leadership, then, would you both say it was kind of more difficult than anticipated? Did you face many barriers? With it being new clinical pharmacists entering kind of management and partnership, or would you say you didn't really have any kind of hurdles as such?
Some of it was easy, some of it was hard. It was a little bit like, because both of us were in that situation where we were the first. So like you said, you were the you were the only PCN pharmacist. As soon as you prove yourself and you're doing a good job, you go to whoever your manager is, and that's what happened with me. I said to my manager, I said, oh, I've done all of this, but I now want to do the next phase. Can I get someone in? And we got another pharmacist in. They did all of my work, and then and you slowly evolve into a leader. We've got 10 pharmacists at my surgery now, so it's the pharmacist, I think we've got 8 doctors and 10 pharmacists. So the pharmacy team is massive in our surgery, and we're taking on so many new roles all the time. And that's kind of just something that's just evolved, and it's been, I'd say, a really easy journey, because I've just been myself, and I've just kept doing the same thing again and again. I just train another pharmacist to take on my role, and I go and learn something else, and I give it to another pharmacist. The bit that's been really difficult, and I still have problems with this, is I'm very well recognized within my area or within my network. When I go to meetings where I'm trying to collaborate with kind of new, or the higher and higher that I go, and they don't expect to see a pharmacist, they expect to see a GP there as the representative from our surgery, and it takes me, I go through that same journey with so many different groups of people where I'm having to prove myself again and again. I've been to conversations where they say, so when's your GP coming? And I'm like, no, I am the representative from WellBN. I am the partner. Oh, we'll just wait for your GP to come along. And and it's so frustrating and so annoying. And that's another kind of trust thing, because I've built that trust within anyone I've come across, but whenever I go to new situations, I still find that a problem, because they just don't understand what pharmacists do, or they don't recognize us as being in that post or that position.
I think for me, leadership can't really happen without sort of ongoing self-awareness and reflection. Because what I've noticed, when people are only focused on the clinical perspective, where they go, I'm just going to be really clinical, and they don't work on the other part of what I call maybe analog skills or soft skills that you talked about, how to talk to people, how to make an impact. Those bits are really important, and sometimes people lose track of that, or perhaps prioritize that really far down the line. Because if you're looking at AI, they can replace clinical knowledge in the press of a button, but a lot of other things that we have as humans is harder. I don't want to say irreplaceable, but harder for any AI to replicate that. So I think it's important for us to build that skill, to be adaptable, to change, because there's so many change coming across all sectors, primary care especially. But also understanding that when you start that self-awareness journey, working on yourself, you will slowly see a bigger picture of, because one of my role in the system is I co-chair Connected Cultures Network. So we address system inequality. So we look at the REST data, and we look at inclusive recruitment, we look at harassment and bullying, we look at racism and a few other things. And when I see that, and some people will ask, why are you taking on so many additional roles? And my answer to it has always been, this is not just applicable to one sector. This is applicable everywhere. So the more I learn about this, the more it will benefit wherever I am going to be. Anything that I've learned when I'm doing any system work can be applied. So I think when we talk about leadership position, we can't forget the potential challenges that are in place. When I talk about luck, when Shilpa agreed with that, is sometimes you get into a place where it's really not supportive. It's very hard. You've tried all your hardest in terms of communicating, and you don't feel that you're getting anywhere. So I don't want all of the, I guess, responsibility to be just on the person. I think there is some level of system responsibility and organizational responsibility where we look at that and we go, Shilpa and myself, for example, we are trying our best to make sure that, somebody pulled the ladder up for us. I'm making sure the ladder stay down, and I keep pulling people up, open the doors for other people. If there are anything that I see that's not right, I will challenge that, because I'm in a different position. We have the influence, we have the power to say that. I don't expect anyone who is brand new having that potential, difficult day, that they feel they're able to, or they are empowered to do that. Because when you're trying to prove that you can do your work, when you're trying to prove your own self-worth, your productivity, that might be really, really hard for some people. So I guess for leadership, for listeners, and listeners who are wanting to go on this journey, and perhaps listeners who are decision making people, look at the things that you can control. So personally, look at your own self-awareness and reflection, and what are the things that you can do better as a person, because it shouldn't separate. When you're better as a person, when you're working on your skills, you are naturally better clinician, better leader, better X, Y, and Z, whichever role that you play. And people who are decision makers who are listening to this, is evaluate what system you have in place and see, what can we do better? I can do better. Everyone can. What little things I can change that can make a difference to the next person who's coming in, or even the existing members who are already in it as well.
Thank you. I think just talking about that as well, and kind of entering primary care, is there anything that you wish you knew sooner? Or, if we talk about hindsight, is there anything that you would have perhaps done differently, or would now share with future clinical pharmacists, kind of before taking a step in primary care?
Go on, Shilpa, you start first.
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think something I've stumbled upon recently is career coaches. So there's lots of there's free services around, which I didn't even know about previously. CPP can provide you with a free career coach, and there's lots of kind of NHS routes as well where you can get career coaching. And I've never had a career coach, and it's only in the last probably 6 months that I have availed that opportunity, and it's been amazing. They've made me think in a different way, and I take my problems to them, and so that's something that I think I could have done with many years ago, even when I was a community pharmacist. I didn't realize we could do things like that. There's also lots of training. There's lots of free training, and I think investing in yourself, even if you have to kind of pay for things, because when I really think about it, I've still got so many more years to give, and anything that I invest in myself now is really benefiting me, and it's kind of escalating me to a whole different level. And I think people forget to invest in themselves. So whether it's paid or free kind of training, um, there's so much out there, and like for me, it's kind of like things like public speaking courses, or it doesn't have to be clinical. It could be just communicating. It could be leadership programs. I've never really been on a lot of training before. The last kind of 4 or 5 years, I've been on lots and lots of training, and that's really helped me. And I think previously I used to always think, if my manager put me on some training course or something like that, whereas now I'm proactively kind of going and looking for things. And I probably do less clinical training now, and more kind of just leadership, management, communication. I go to the TED Talks, and I just kind of really kind of look out there for different things. Maybe you go on, Ewan, and I'll think of other stuff.
I think I think hindsight for me, and this is something that I've recognized when I speak to students, or when I speak to international medical graduates, when I teach them, or any other types of profession. It's not just pharmacy students, medical students, nursing students, is trying to separate your productivity to your self-worth. So if you have a really good day and you feel brilliant, good. But if you have a horrible day and you think, oh, is it my skills? Is it my problem? Because thinking like this is natural, but thinking like this will lead you to burning out very quickly, because you almost take everything personally. So I've got this quote on my board in my room, and there are a few quotes on there that I tend to remove when it's like really sinking in. But this is something where I put it on, where I say that if you can separate you to what's happening around you, and if you can make that distance further away than ever, you're making progress. Sometimes it'll be harder because you've had a crappy night's sleep, because of family, because of illnesses, things that you can't control. It fluctuates. So when I talk about that self-awareness, I think that's really important, because without that, you lose sight of how you are keeping yourself at optimum condition. Because without that, there's only so far you can go. I think the other thing as well is for don't be afraid to ask, because with the CD role, I went through career coaching through Practitioners Health, so they provide career coaching, group free as well, and individual coaching. So Practitioners Health, you can just go online and it's NHS. I went through that, and then it really helped me clarify that I can actually ask for that position. That sometimes we wait for people to come to us and offer that. If you're thinking about it, fine. But if it's something that that this is going to be it, you are prepared, you've got all the all the evidences of the document, everything else, and you have validation of people around you, don't be afraid to ask. Even if people say no, take it as no, but what? So it can be no now, but if you do X, Y, and Z, it will be a yes. So don't be so defeated when somebody say no, because that is just the start of a discussion. I'm actually reading a book about this now. When people say no, try to drill down to why and what can you do about it. I think these are perhaps two hindsight that I would give to a younger Ewan.
And it also plants a seed, doesn't it? It lets them know that you're aiming towards that. So that's kind of happened with me a few times, where people have come to me and asked me, and I didn't even realize that they were thinking along that route. So now I've got that in the back of my mind. When the opportunity comes, I'll be asking them to step into that role. So yeah, I think it's kind of letting people know what you're aiming for. And I think a few other things that have come to me is network, communicate, go to those meetings, put yourself forward, get out of your comfort zone, and just, the more it, it's a real networking game, and it's all about kind of going out there. um, LinkedIn has been amazing for me. It's just kind of opened so many doors, and I really wish I'd gone on LinkedIn like 10 years ago. And if I, had had done that back then, um, that would have really. And I encourage everyone to kind of go on LinkedIn, set up an account, and just network on there, just talk to people, and learn from each other through there. Um, yeah, and I think I really want to highlight what you said earlier about the problem solving, because now I'm in the management role. Everyone's bringing problems to me every day, and I just, you just kind of drown in all the problems. And if someone comes to me with a problem and a solution, I'm like, yeah, go for it. Just, and it makes such a big difference. And you get recognized for it. I think definitely that's something people need to be doing more of.
Yeah, so that's really good to hear actually about the coaching, because I hadn't come across that at all either. So it's something I'll definitely mention to my candidates as well. That there's opportunities like that out there.
Mm.
I'm just gonna go out and find it
And
essentially.
I was always worried that because it was free, and what's it going to be like? Oh, but it's amazing. It's been really,
Yeah.
really good. They pick really good people, and they're usually pharmacists who know kind of what you're going, or they understand you. There's also loads of kind of groups that you can join. So I've joined a um, female leaders network. That was through LinkedIn as well. I found out about them, and we meet once a month, and it kind of really inspires me, and it kind of motivates me. I see all these females, doing all sorts round the world, and they have like different speakers. So kind of going to those kind of events and really kind of getting encouraged and motivated and inspired has been really good.
We'll send you those links, Jasmine, so then, when they listen to this, they can go into the
Yes.
show notes, and then they can click on those to access rather than, them trying to find it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Put something together. Another thing I wanted to mention as well was very profound what you said, Ewan, about not associating your productivity with your self-worth. I really love that, and I think I'll implement that, even though I'm not a clinical pharmacist. I really love that. And I think going on to kind of the main attributes then, that we've kind of heard this through the conversations, but what do you think the main attributes are that you need to, I guess, go down this route, or take your career down the management side of things, as well as, maintaining your being a clinical pharmacist as well?
I guess for me, is really understanding what you want out of this journey. I don't mean status wise, I mean understanding what are your values. There are lots of free tests out there. Go and have a good dig on what makes you tick, and name them. Sometimes people can be very abstract about it, but when you can go, my values are X and Y. For me, it's growth and service. When you're able to name them so clearly, your next step or your decision making process can be guided. That's almost like your North Star. So anything that comes, and you might think, oh, am I having an episode of FOMO? Let me just align it with my values. Is it something that I really want to do? Is it something that's aligned with my North Star? And if it is, go ahead. But if not, what you will come across is you will have people asking you, or perhaps you think, oh, there's so many options, I don't even know where to start. I've had people coming to me saying, I've been offered partnership, I've turned it down. I said, okay, it's fine to do that as long as you know what is the route that you want to do, regardless of what the title looks like. Because if you know this is your niche, your strength, and also your passion, if you can combine all of that together, that will make you really unstoppable, because there's going to be very, very hard to find somebody with that all three things align. And for somebody, it might be they have to do it because they've just been put on this route, but maybe they really like something else. So I think with Shilpa and myself, we really enjoy what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly. Yes, we'll have difficult periods of time where we think, oh my goodness, why is all these problems all coming at the same time? But because we know why we're doing it in the first place, then it makes everything much more rewarding. So I would stole Simon Sinek's quote, just find your why, find out what makes you really have this zing or have this flow when you are doing that particular thing that you really enjoy, and people will go, wow, you are, your opinions and your thoughts or your ideas, it's so creative, it's so out of the box, we love it. Find that. It takes time and it can't happen without that inner work. I think that's why I co-host the Imperfect Clinician podcast, where we talk about sort of self and how we can improve it. And I'm doing another episode about burnout with one of your colleagues, because we want to be the best clinician always, as clinical pharmacists or any other roles that you are in, or even if you're not a clinician, we always want to be the best when we're at work. So it's just most people go with that mindset. But without building that resilience, without building that ability or that muscle to keep yourself mentally, physically well, it's going to be hard for you to go on the long haul.
It's like finding your ikigai. So the Japanese concept of finding your purpose in life, and I really truly feel, I mean, I read the ikigai book probably about 5-6 years ago, and it really opened a new thinking for me, and it really made me realize why I've gone down this path, and I really have found my purpose to the point where it doesn't feel like work anymore. It just feels like I want to be doing it all the time. And I, the whole concept is that you should be doing something that means you never want to retire. It's just something you're going to do. It's a way of life, and that's kind of the journey that I've been on. I really feel like I have found my ikigai, and I'm just going to keep going wherever this takes me. And as I said earlier, I literally just do things that I enjoy doing. If I don't like it, I've got a massive team, and I'll find someone in the team, because there's so many different people. Someone is always going to enjoy one of the job roles, and that's something I think I get a lot of praise for in our team. Like, I always look at the strengths of people, but look at what they actually enjoy doing, and I give that role to that person, because they're going to do it passionately, and they're going to want to keep doing it. So all of us, that's how I distribute our roles. I try and figure out who's going to kind of really enjoy doing this, and somehow we always find something that I absolutely hate doing, someone else will feel really passionate about and enjoy doing. And I think also it's about pushing yourself. I A lot of the times I would never have thought that I could be doing what I'm doing. And you just have to push yourself sometimes, and then later on you look back and you think, oh, I'm actually doing something that I just thought would have been impossible for me to be doing. And you, like you say, you asked to be a clinical director, and if you hadn't have gone and done that, and always think, there's not a lot to lose to just go and ask and put yourself out there. I'm a candidate for the RPS board elections next month, and that was something I could never have imagined that I would put myself forward for, many years ago. And suddenly now I've got the confidence to do that. But it's just by pushing that barrier bit by bit every year and trying different things. And now I've kind of got to a stage where I felt confident to put myself forward for that. But I think a lot of people are really scared to, put their hands up and give that idea. or share an idea. And I've really learned that you can't be scared, and you've just got to put those ideas out there. And you might look stupid sometimes, or you might it might go the wrong way, but you'll learn from that, and people will forget about it. The next month there's something else to talk about. And I think you really benefit from doing that, from just kind of pushing yourself.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of it is as cringy as it may sound, but it's the work within. Like you said, finding your purpose. So yeah, I think I'm gonna take a lot away from this as well myself. Actually, you'll have to send me a link to that book, Shilpa, and I'll definitely be checking out your podcast, Ewan. Sounds like it could, yeah, it'll be beneficial. But like you said, I guess it's not always targeting a specific title or status, but it's actually establishing what someone might absolutely love as a GP partner. You may not, and that is okay to accept that. And I was going to ask actually, what does your role entail as a clinical director, you in as a GP partner? But that could be a whole other episode. But it'll be good to, I guess, finish off with a general summary of your advice for clinical pharmacists. Anything that maybe you've not already mentioned, because I think we've heard a lot of great stuff and a lot of great advice from yourselves. But is there anything else that you
I,
would?
I think perhaps I'd noticed that not a lot of people know what clinical director do in a PCN. So I'll just do a very quick summary.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
clinical director provides strategic leadership, so vision and direction for the PCN, collaborate with other PCNs. So all of the clinical directors for Lincolnshire meet up every fortnight, and then we plan and we do any service development, quality improvement. Like recently I put on LinkedIn that there was a eating disorder pilot that was launched within our PCN. So making changes, but more from a system level. There is, of course, a lot of the network there's. There is funding, no different than being a partner. There is, budgeting and how to make sure that we allocate that. There is a lot of population health management. So by doing that, you look at heaps and heaps of data that's coming through out of your ears, and you go, right, how can I make sense of this, and how can I align the team to address population health management, and how to do it creatively. How do I work with neighbourhood team? How do I work with tertiary care? How do I work with other trusts? So it's almost like building at what we call CPP, so community partnership, where we look at, we manage health going forward will be different. It's not going to be the traditional way of just looking at a location and its patient. We're going to look at broader. We're going to look at health inequalities. We're going to look at socioeconomic deprivation and how we can work differently together, just utilizing the budget that's been given. So it's very super quick summary of a role of a clinical director.
No, thank you. That's actually really useful, and I know that a lot of our audience will probably want to know. And if viewers do want to know more about the role in detail, more, I guess, the logistics, definitely let you in and ourselves know. I'm sure that could be another episode. And Shilpa, is there anything you want to add about your kind of role as a partner, or?
I suppose when I became a partner, I just looked at it as running a business, and I now have a company that I'm running, and I just do whatever it takes for the company to run well. So I just jump into where before I was just medication lead. Any problems that come along, I look at it like if you owned a coffee shop, and how you would just kind of do whatever it took to resolve any issues that come your way. I just get involved in every single side of anything that goes wrong, or any improvements we want to make, or any ideas we have. And I don't limit myself to kind of thinking, well, I'm the pharmacy or I'm the medication partner. I've kind of gone and just jumped into every single role. I've worn every hat, and I think that's what's given me the opportunity to now go to that next level, because a lot of my partners aren't doing that. They're sticking within their, we've got GPs who are kind of GP partners, but they look after their own. We've got a safeguarding partner. We've got kind of one of the partners look after IT. So everyone's kind of stuck within their role. But because it was all new for me, I just jumped into every single kind of area. And so I think that's a really kind of good way to do things. And I just end with saying, do your best. Just do your best all the time. And I believe in karma, and the good things just come along if you're doing your best every day.
One thing I think we haven't really mentioned, but I think it's important for listeners to be aware, is to work on conflict resolution skills, because we, perhaps as pharmacists or maybe other professions, are not that open in terms of dealing with conflict. Some people might avoid it just in general. And so having that skill to manage it, and again, back to that self-awareness, you can't do that without understanding your fears. How do you react to situation? Because you're dealing with very emotionally charged conversation. You can't react. You have to just listen, take a breather, and then think critically. Building on those conflict resolution skills will give you an edge above anybody, regardless of what their role is, because you will always come across meetings, conversation where people disagree with each other, sometimes loudly, sometimes indirectly. And so your way of dealing with that, it's going to give you an additional benefit, or a little head start compared to
That
your other
edge, yeah.
people. Yeah.
And how did you learn those skills, Ewan?
I had to understand, for me, it's going back to how did I deal with conflict previously and why. So understanding, so when you talk about being afraid to raise your hand, I tend to, when I have placements, I have students, and I tend to ask them why. What are you actually afraid of? So yes, I'm afraid of, making a mistake, but what is it? So digging deeper. So why are you afraid of making a mistake? Are you worried about others' perception of you? Then why are you worried about others' perception of you? And is it drill down to how you see yourself? At the end of the day, a lot of it is linked with how you see yourself and how you perceive yourself, because if that is not set in stone, a lot of it will depend on what you think other people think of you, and there is a lot of perception that can go wrong there. So without that work, I find it really hard to manage conflict well, because if not, what I'm going to do is just to react and try to, if I've spoken to so many people who are people pleasers, if you want to solve the problem, you want to just, stop the charge in the room, stop people feeling upset, you might not be dealing with the core of the solution. So if you want to encourage other people to take charge of change, to take charge of accountability, responsibility, you have to start within. If you want to motivate others, you have to know how to motivate yourself. Conflict happens everywhere, in families, relatives, friends. Use those as your almost practice ground, because if you can have a difficult conversation with your parents, I am sure you can deal with most conversations outside of family, really.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. That finished it off really nicely. And again, I feel like I've taken away something as well. So thank you. It's been, yeah, a pleasure to have both of you on board. Been waiting for this collaboration now. And so I'm very excited to get this out there on LinkedIn, on our socials. For everyone listening, for any questions, if you'd like to reach out to Shilpa and Yuen, I'm sure they'll be happy to receive a message or an email. So please feel free to do so. Lastly, yeah, thank you for joining us, Ewan and Shilpin. That's a brilliant episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. taken away something, and I'm sure our viewers will too.
You've been listening to the Illuminating Primary Care podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review, and share so others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you're a practice looking to recruit permanent clinicians, such as GPs, nurses, or allied health staff, please get in touch at menloparkrecruitment.com or email james@menloparkrecruitment.com. For daily primary care news, please follow Menlo Park Recruitment on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time for another episode of the Illuminating Primary Care podcast.